Let's now move on to the next topic for the course, which is about recursion. Specifically, we're going to focus on how to program with recursion, and this will hopefully make some smooth transition for you to the sequel to this course, which is about the fundamentals of data structures. Let's now see what the learning outcomes are before we move on to the technical contents. So then, by the end of this module, hopefully you'll learn about how to solve problems recursively. So you really want to have that kind of mindset about how to solve problems recursively. Most likely, the problems that you will be given for the exercise or be given in the exam will not exactly match what you were given in the lecture for the examples. So you really have to be creative about solving problems recursively. That's something I will try to really focus on when I do the examples together with you in the lecture. All right, number two, we're going to go over a good number of example recursions on strings and also arrays. Specifically, I want you to pay more attention to arrays because you can think about string is just like an array of characters. So we are really solving the same kind of problem. And I'll try to summarize about the solution pattern for all the problems that we're going to go over as examples. All right, so and then we hope if time permitted, we'll also go over some more advanced example. For example, Tower of Hanoi. That's something we'll go over if time permitted. All right, so typically I will only give you beyond this lecture slides at the end of the module, but now I want to mention that right away, so you can also do some preparation for yourself, not just for the exam, but also get prepared for the next course for the data structure. Right, so these two links contain some very fantastic resources for sharpening your recursive skills. So this is from some website called Coding Bets. I'm pretty sure you can find other exercises as well online. So I'll encourage you to really go only treat these two as a starting points for doing extra problems. So if you click on the link, and then you're going to see the coding batch. So we got recursion 1 and recursion 2. Recursion 1 are more or less the more elementary recursion problem. I will suggest you start with that. And the recursion number 2 actually contain a little bit more advanced examples. And the good thing about it is, every time you submit your solution online in the website, they will tell you how correct your solutions are based on the JUnit test cases they run behind the scene. Right, that's something I will expect that you will actually do for your preparation for the exam and also for the next course. Beyond this course, I would say the best approach to learning about recursion is really to program in the so-called functional programming language. And this is something I will leave for those of you who are really interested in exploring recursion. And the best way is to learn about, from my point of view, is to learn about a language called Haskell. It's a very popular functional programming language, purely functional programming language actually. So for example, in Java, they do support something called lambda calculus. However, that one is only some extra addition to the OOP, the object-oriented programming language. But I would say to really learn about recursion, to really force yourself to really program with recursion, the Haskell, like a purely functional programming language, is really the best way to go. I'm including some starting tutorial in case you're interested. This is completely optional beyond this course, but I would say for those of you who are really interested in mastering recursion, this will be the best way to go. But as far as this course is concerned, still focus on these two links as the starting points to practice your recursion skill. All right, let's now talk about recursion. I would like to first of all talk about the high-level principle, and then we're going to follow this set of principles for all the examples that we're going to go over in this module. Okay. Recursion is very useful in expressing solutions to problems that can be recursively defined, right? And recursively defined solution is really based on mathematics. So that's something we'll see as well. So we got base cases. So base cases are basically very simple cases that you can solve right away. So their solution should be very trivial, which you can define right away without any trouble. Okay, so small problems in problem instances immediately solvable, right? That's the definition for base cases. And about recursive cases, cases are the opposite to base cases, meaning that you cannot really get their solution right away. Okay, so that will be larger problem instances that cannot be immediately solvable, right? Its definition is rather straightforward. How do we solve it? If you really want to solve the recursive cases, you will actually have to reuse the solutions to strictly smaller problem instances. So this is something you will keep seeing me do when we actually solve the recursion examples. But one thing I want to highlight, so whenever you want to solve the recursive cases for larger problems, you have to somehow make use of solutions to strictly smaller problem instances. So the strictly smaller is really important. If the solutions to the problems are not really strictly smaller, you'll run into infinite recursion, which means your program will never terminate. That's something I will emphasize as well when we see the code. Right? And one thing I want to highlight as well, so the idea about recursion is really similar to what you learned hopefully in the high school, or maybe at least in the first year. It's about mathematical induction. Let's say, for example, just very quickly. So let's say if you're trying to prove certain property for, let's say, the numbers from 1 to n, right? N is certain number. And then the way to prove it could be you make some hypothesis called the inductive hypothesis. And then you assume the inductive hypothesis will actually hold for the values from 1 up to and including n minus 1. That's what you can assume. So you can think about these are simply solutions to the strictly smaller problem from 1 to n minus 1, right? And then to really solve the actual problem that's really large enough for value n, you can somehow make use of these inductive hypotheses for the smaller problems, and then try to combine them to prove that the ultimate problem of size n can also be solved using the inductive hypothesis. So that will be kind of the idea, so that that we're going to use as well for recursion. All right. Anyway, so to really make the connection between recursion and mathematical induction, I'll leave that connection to you to explore it beyond this course. If you want to get more insight, you can also reach out to me. We can also discuss. Let's now just talk about visually how we can solve recursion in general. Okay. Pretty much like what I said, you have to be very clear about the distinction between a small problem over here, in which case you can simply solve it directly. So here I'm using the blue box for problem and the green box for its solution, right? You can see these are rather small, meaning that given this small problem here, base case, you can definitely get its solution right away. What about bigger problem? You can see this box over here is much larger than this. So we're saying that you cannot really get its solution right away. So what can you do? What you can do is you're going to divide it into smaller, strictly smaller problem. You can see this sub-problem here is strictly smaller than that. And this is also strictly smaller than that. And this one over here is also strictly smaller than that. And then you can safely assume somehow for each of the strictly smaller problem, we do have their corresponding solution, right? You can think about this solution here is for this strictly smaller problem. And also this solution here is for this strictly smaller problem, and etc. And then to really construct the ultimate solution, you can actually somehow combine this and this and this together to make the solution that will actually work for the original big problem. That's basically the steps you have to take. Usually, for the new learners to recursion, what you really cannot really get your mind straight about is how can I simply just assume about these solutions over here and then combine them, and then somehow programmatically it will just magically work as the solution for the big problem over here. That's something I will have to convince you by tracing the recursion, which is something we'll revisit about how to use a call stack. All right, but overall, I want you to really keep this picture in your mind to really make sure you understand. Every time you want to solve something that's really too big, all you have to do is to really divide it into sub-problems over here. Each one of them is simply strictly smaller. And then you will assume every one of the strictly smaller problem can be solved using solution over here. And then somehow combine them or massage them into the solution for the bigger problem. And then this will just magically work. When I say magically, it's just that you have to really explicitly trace the code in order to see how exactly that works. But without tracing it, it appears like a magic. But it's really no magic, really. All right. Finally, let me just talk about what will be the general structure for a recursion look like. Let's say I have some method n over here, right? Typically, if you see somewhere in the method you're trying to call itself, you may actually call the method itself maybe for different occasions. But let's just take one occasion for example. You can think about this one here. This m here is the same name as this m over here, and this argument here is also matching this parameter over here, right? I'm not really including the parameter type for the method, but you will see. This is really so-called a recursive call. Recursive call of the same method m. Think about what's happening over here. We are trying to define the method m to see how that works inside the curly brackets over here. But inside its definition, we're saying that in order to define n of input size I, we have to somehow execute n, the same method, with input size j. That's what we're saying, right? So all I want you to know is whenever you see inside the method implementation, if you're calling itself, in that case, you definitely are defining something recursively. That's one thing I want you to know. And the second thing I want you to know, which is also very important, is to really compare the arguments over here, j, and also the I over here, right? So when we actually trace the recursion, every time, for example, when you actually try to, let's say, in order to execute n of maybe 100 over here, right? And according to the definition, you are also going to in turn cause something n of value j over here, right? And that according to our definition over here, in order for you to solve a big problem over here, we have to divide it into solution for strictly smaller problem. So that means this j over here must be strictly smaller than the original size. Otherwise, you'll run into infinite recursion, which is something I will give you another example to illustrate. All right, as a recap, whenever you see under the definition for a method, if you're calling itself, then you have recursive call, number one. Number two, whenever you're making a recursive call, you want to make sure the recursive call is really trying to solve a strictly smaller problem. In this case, if we started with the problem of size 100, in that case, the j that for which we're making a recursive call must be strictly smaller. It cannot be equal to. Right? So these are the 2 points I want you to keep in mind. And then you will see the same points will just be emphasized over and over when we do the examples. All right, let's now see some example for recursion. Let's see what else on the slides. All right, so that's exactly what I just illustrated. So just make sure you actually understand the 2 points I just recapped. And in order to trace the recursive methods, we have to use the stack, which we already spoke about when we talk about tracing the exceptions, right? So that's something I'm not gonna go over in details again. We're just gonna do examples together to revisit the idea about the call stack. But you can definitely go over all the points over here. But let me just emphasize the keywords that you have to revisit yourself. You can definitely feel free to also go back to your exceptions lecture to also revisit what a call stack is. But we basically say every time when a method is actually called, it will be activated and also placed or pushed onto the stack. That's the starting point of execution, number one. And number two, so every time if the method itself actually try to call another helper method, in this case, it could be the method itself, which would be a recursive call. In that case, we have to activate that particular recursive call and then push that onto the top of the stack. So that means on the stack, you will actually see several instances of the same method being pushed onto the stack. That's something we'll see, right? And the stack will contain the so-called activation records over here. But you can think about activation records simply some information about a stack, like where the method call was actually made, and also what argument value it contains. The latter will be the most important information to keep track of, right? And the top of the stack will just be the current point of execution, right? So every time you want to continue with the execution, you want to look at what's the top of the stack. And the remaining parts of the stack will just be suspended, right? Meaning that they are not gone, but at some point we should really reach to those temporarily suspended methods one by one, from top to the bottom of the stack, right? And every time we remove some method from the stack for execution, well, maybe after we have executed the method, is so-called being popped or just removed, right? So the terminology about push and also pop will also be revisited when you actually go to the sequel course to 2030 when we talk about data structures. All right, so finally, you want to know that execution will terminate when the stack simply becomes empty. So that's something we did when we tried to trace the exception in the earlier lecture. So we just revisit this just to, by doing some recursive call tracing. All right, let's now take a look at our first example for recursion, which is about calculating factorial.